programmed to bring you a special bulletin.
This is a test of the emergency broadcast system.
5, check for sound. 4,
It's showtime.
3,
Let's
2,
go.
1.
Thanks to Rode Microphones and Harlan Hogan's VoiceOverEssentials.com, the home of the Portabooth Pro. This is the Pro Audio Suite podcast with Robert Marshall from Source Elements and Someone Audio Post, Chicago. Darren Robbo Robertson from Voodoo Radio Imaging, Sydney. From LA, George the Tech Whittam, the tech to the VO stars. And me, Andrew Peters, voiceover talent and home studio guy. Welcome to another Pro Audio Suite Quick Bite, thanks to Harlan Hogan's VoiceOver Essentials, the home of the Portabooth Pro, and Rode Microphones. Now, this week we want to talk about a beta stage product called RTL. So, Robert, give us a bit of a rundown on what it actually is.
RTL is an acronym for Remote Timeline. And so the idea is to sort of make a workflow possible that was always happening before COVID, which was some sort of dialogue replacement or dialogue, voice recording that needs to happen in sync with picture. Where normally this type of session would happen between two studios. So two engineers are connected using Source Connect. They're in whatever Pro Tools or whatever workstation they're using. And Source Connect has a feature called RTS, which stands for Remote Transport Sync. And that is that strange play and stop button that some standard users see at the bottom of it and they never know what it does. So what it does is it lets you run two audio workstations in sync with each other so that the engineer on one end can control the system on the other end, and therefore when they see picture on one side and the audio gets back to the engineer who initiated play or record, it's in sync for them as well, even though it took time for that performance to get to them. So what RTL does is it removes the need for the other side of the connection to be necessarily at a studio, and specifically it removes the need for them to run a workstation like Pro Tools or Logic, because what RTL is just a little video package. It's a player and a timeline of videos that matches the timeline of videos on the engineer's side. So now they can control this little application. The way it works is essentially the engineer creates a timeline. They load in all the videos they have in their workstation in Pro Tools, and they load those videos into the remote timeline creator, and they assign the right start times for everything. And they make the file, and they can password encrypt it and whatnot, a few things like that. But it makes a file that they can deliver to the talent however they'd like, over Dropbox or what have you, FedEx it to them maybe. And then the talent will open up that file, and the video will show up. And all they have to do in Source Connect is go to the transport window or section at the bottom of it and click the receive button. And now the engineer at the other side of the connection is in control of the talent's picture. So they can put the talent into play. The talent sees the picture. They do their performance. The performance gets back to the engineer half second later or 50 years later, whatever the latency is. And then that engineer system goes into play and records the performance rate and sync on the timeline of the engineer. And voila, remote ADR with only a studio on one side. And you don't have to have the whole point of it is that you don't have to have a workstation on both sides. You can have Pro Tools on one side and just a small app that we deliver to the talent so that they can not have to worry about all the complexities of setting up Pro Tools for a syncing session.
That's insane. So quick question, just from listening to you, because I guess from growing up in the days of tape, I still do use Pro Tools in some respects like a analog multitrack. So if I was doing a session to picture, because, basically, let's say a 30-second TV, and we did a take and the client was happy, but then they went, well, we want to try something else. Rather than do another track, I would actually copy my pictures and the base audio down the timeline and just do it again. So I would have, by the sounds of it, I would have to change my workflow and create a new track. Is that correct? because it
You
wouldn't
would,
see
or
the
you'd
one
have
I'd
to
copied
predict
down.
how many times you're going to do that so that you
Yeah.
have a few to copy down to. And so you could embrace that workflow, but you'd kind of have to.
Oh, it's just
guess.
an old hang-around habit. It's nothing I couldn't change. But yeah, I was just trying to get it clear in my head how that
Right,
would
because
work.
in the days of tape, you didn't want to erase what you had.
That's right.
It's not like
Yeah, so you just do another copy.
you just push it down the line and do another
Yeah.
one
Yeah,
further
yeah,
down
yeah.
the tape.
Yeah, I just offset the video machine and go again. But yeah, interesting. Okay.
It's interesting, yeah. There's probably ways to accommodate that, but what we're actually also working on, just like beta on top of beta, is for some workflows you can't even put the picture at the talent side for whatever reason, and so even though you're streaming a lot more stuff and it's a lot, it's basically a lot more complex. The other thing we're working on in this sort of line of products is to be able to stream the picture to the talent. The talent performs against that picture. The performance gets back to the engineer system, and it still captures it in sync, essentially.
Wow.
So now we don't even have to, like with that idea, you don't have to deliver a file to the talent. You can just stream the picture to them continuously.
That's a great idea.
That's insane. That's
Yeah,
really
that's-
Because I
cool.
think there's productions where like they're so worried about intellectual property theft that they won't even send a file out.
Yes. So basically what it is there's sort of two workflows, and locking picture makes a lot more sense and simplifies the workflow and simplifies the stress on the internet that you're using, because you're not streaming everything all over the
Right.
place. It's like the
Right.
picture's not changing in these workflows. That's different for picture editorial, but if you're doing ADR,
Right.
that's the picture that you're working on. So there's advantages to the different ways of accomplishing the same result.
Yeah.
And so suffice to say, that one where you're live streaming and still syncing is a lot more complex
Yeah.
than
People
just.
are hacking that together, right? I mean, they're hacking it together with
I don't even
Zoom
think they're
and-
hacking it together. They're just accepting that life is out of sync and Godzilla's coming to the village while they do the take live, and then
Right.
and then they put it into sync, and they're like, "What do you guys think?" And the whole time, like, hopefully they're looking on it, like the video is the other issue. Something like Zoom doesn't keep a good frame rate. How could you do ADR really effectively that way? So Source Live will stream very consistent video with tight audio sync so that you can actually have an idea of what you're getting, what you're commenting on. If your directors and writers and all the team, the creative team is remote, if they're looking at consumer quality communications video, webcam type, streaming video, it's going to be really hard to make the same accurate decisions that you're making when you're looking at things directly.
Now, how does this whole thing work if there are 3 talent in 3 locations for a loop group?
Yep.
5 or
Yep.
7 or 12.
So I'll tell you that we've had people do loop groups as big as, I believe, 13, all using Source Connect with the end engineer recording the entire loop group, like each member separately on a different track. The full sync of that one is not solved yet. That's really hard. So the first take, Godzilla's coming to the village. Then you can knock it back in time and evaluate it if you need to evaluate it, or else right away that it wasn't a great take. Let's do it again. We don't even need to,
People have a different offset, right? Is that what makes it so hard?
It's impossible. Yeah, you essentially have to somehow synchronize multiple streams instead of synchronizing to just one thing. It's easy to sync to one thing. I'll wait for you,
Well, it's like when we snap our fingers, ironically, at the beginning of our sessions today.
Correct. That's exactly the problem right
And
there.
we do it every time because we all get a chuckle out of it, but it's useless.
It's barely useful. It's just like the end of the file is
It's
somewhere
just a marker,
here.
like it's
Yeah.
somewhere around where that clicking thing is.
Do you know what it is? It's a visual reference for the idiot that has to edit this show that, hey, somewhere around here they're going to start to line up.
Yeah. So it is exceedingly difficult to do loop group remotely for now.
Right. It's exceedingly difficult, but it is getting done. Like I said, we've had I don't know.
But RTL is not something that's used. That's not what this product was built to do.
You can't do loop group with this one because you might be able to do loop group with the streaming version that we're right now trying to brew up. That one has a much better chance of doing loop group than because the mechanics of syncing multiple pictures. I mean, you could do it, but I think the difference would be if you were to do it by syncing multiple pictures, you'd probably say, let's do take one. And then the take would start because it would take about that much time to get all these players lined up. I think it would.
Would you have to work to the worst connection, the worst internet connection?
Exactly. Well,
Yep.
You can't do time travel. You can't go in advance, right? So all you can do is wait.
Yeah. Which brings me to my question, coming from the land down under where speeds of 50 megabytes per second down and 20 megabytes per second are supposedly blindingly fast. What sort of connection will it deal with?
You'd probably be okay with that. The toughest thing is streaming picture. You can do a lot of audio with 20 megs upload and 50 megs download. And picture you can do quite a bit. The good thing about Source Live, the LL version, is that it really only works off of our streaming resources in the cloud, which are what make it run so well. And the other advantage of that is that if you have whatever it might be, 50 clients, you're still just using one upload stream to get your video up for all 50 to like the servers do the replication for you. You don't have to have an upload capacity for each client that is watching.
Right.
So that's a good thing there. I would say you'd probably be able to get at least 1-2 video streams would be.
Okay. So I could work with me, a client, and a voiceover then probably.
You probably could. I mean, you would want your entire family off the internet when you're doing
Do it in the middle of the night, you reckon? Yeah.
Yeah, if you owned that entire internet connection, you'd probably be pretty okay. You'd be able to stream, if in an ideal world, you'd be able to stream picture to the talent, picture to your clients, get audio from the talent, have a couple clients online, which those would each be an individual stream as far as you're sending and receiving, but that's just audio. So you can do a lot of damage.
Just a quick question. Did the documentary you made for AES, has that gone public or is that still under wraps?
I'm not sure. I think it's still under wraps, but we really wanted to go public, and I don't know what the arrangement or the understanding is as far as when we can put that out there. I know we can at some point.
I think you're trying to get together the $1.5 million the female talent was demanding for her appearance. Is that right?
Yeah.
I don't know whether we talk. Do we talk about that, or is that best kept under the hood?
Oh, I think we've got to give Somerset a slap on the back, don't we?
Yeah. We have no problem with it, and she did a great job. That's the point.
Exactly.
Yeah, because what I was going to mention, in fact I will mention, is that during the documentary, of course, my daughter was involved and I was involved because I was sitting here sort of plugging things in and whatever. And it was pretty damned amazing to watch that whole thing come together. The fact that she was sitting in here on Wi-Fi with a laptop in the booth, working to pictures with Mike in London and you, Robert, in Chicago.
Wow.
Was very impressive.
That's so cool.
Yeah, so that was Mike was doing the recording and I was watching on Source Live, and then Somerset was using RTL, so she was synced up with Mike, and we were all talking to each other essentially through Mike, and Mike was using Nexus to do all the routing internally within his system.
And also, as part of that documentary, you weren't using RTL for the orchestral recordings, or were you?
We did. We used both RTL and Source Live in that one as well. The reason why we used RTL in Chicago was because we were monitoring in 5.1 surround for that. So we had a 5.1 stream, which currently Source Live cannot do a 5.1 stream. So everyone who was watching the orchestra on Source Live had a stereo stream, And then we were locking to picture and using Source Connect to get the audio in 5.1 and at the Chicago location. The orchestra was in Austria. We were using the two at the same time.
That was amazing.
Insane.
That there was a Viennese Symphony Orchestra in Vienna.
Right, we were monitoring. We were not recording them. I mean, they recorded, I can't even tell you, 50, 100 tracks. It was a ton. And so we were monitoring the recording in surround, but I was not doing the recording. I think the name of the company is Synchron Stage, and it's pretty much what they do is they provide orchestra recordings for films and just the quality of the players and many other reasons. I mean, the facility they have is awesome, and their service is to provide an orchestra for composers and film scorers to record. So they're doing this all the time remotely.
Wow.
It was incredible. In fact, this is sort of slightly off topic, I guess, but I was wondering, from the pictures I was watching of the documentary, what was the the console they were using?
Oh, yeah.
In fact,
it's an
it was
SSL
huge.
duality.
It was massive.
That's what I mean. Their place is awesome. I don't even know for sure, but it has to be on the low side. That desk is probably $250,000.
More, I'd say.
Yeah,
definitely
$500,000. I'm not sure because I'm not in that market, but yeah, that's Duality is a board that is basically it's half analog console, which SSL is just known for, and then the other half is a digital control surface in a sense. So each channel that you flip, you have your analog input, or maybe you're mixing through it. I'm sure it has all these routing modes. And then the fader, Robbo, you'll understand this, the fader can be flipped over to be the fader inside of Pro Tools.
Ah, wow.
So it's like
Isn't that clever?
Yeah.
Huh.
Wow. That's what you get with several $100,000.
Yeah.
Yes, indeed.
I might pop out and buy one. You want to get local audio store for one of those?
99% of that budget is the analog circuitry.
It's so true.
Yeah, that's
1% of it's the digital
Absolutely.
controller.
Yeah.
That's true.
Taramara Music, I'm on my way.
You have to knock out a few walls in the house to fit it in, I think.
That's right. It's like
huge,
3 by 3 meter cube.
Yeah. I mean, did you catch the mics they were using? They had a decatry of Neumann M50s up there, I think.
Wow.
Jeez.
They had M50s, saw a C12. Interestingly, I saw 2 Austrian Audio OC818s on the harp.
Huh.
Oh,
Good eyes,
I
good eyes.
I didn't catch that one.
Yeah. There was a C12, and I don't know what that was. I'm trying to remember what that was. I think it was above the violins from memory, or I could be wrong. But yes, what an array of incredibly expensive microphones.
Pretty much had, an endless budget of microphones.
So where's this video? When do we get to? It's not out yet, I take it from what you're talking about.
So what it was is a video that we produced, and the idea with the video was that we were showing these workflows, and then in the middle of the video, after we show it in action, and we just sort of speak about what it is that we are doing, then Mike cuts in, and Mike is at Source Elements. He's on the solutions team with me, and he's a broadcast engineer, a post engineer, and he's got a friend who's a great video editor. So he put together these vignettes where he explains each workflow, sort of nuts and bolts of it. And then it gets on with the story of next thing we did is the voiceover. And then we have this session with Somerset. And then after that, he kind of gives the nuts and bolts of that session and how it worked. And there's some cool graphics that show all the routing of where everything is going. So it was a thing that we did with, for AES, for them to show at the convention, which had to be run virtually. And it just seemed like a good subject matter given the times. And I think there's some time period of exclusivity where if you're an AES member, you can go watch it.
Right.
I should know where exactly.
Yeah.
Rebecca, I actually asked her about this exact thing. When can we, when's it being released to the wild? She said, we're working on getting it up on YouTube. It's being broken down into pieces. Whatever that means.
Right. Well, that's just it, because in the in the story, we basically start out with a tracking session for the orchestra. There's a voiceover record session. There's a session where I just sit with the composer and we talk about what stems he's going to give me for mixing and what we have. There's an actual mix session, and each of those sessions you kind of see it happen, and then there's the section of it where Mike jumps in and kind of explains it.
Right.
We're going to break those out into, like, here's a voice record with RTL. Here's a remote record with an orchestra. Here's a remote mix session with someone sitting in a parking lot and someone else in a studio and a few other people.
Yeah.
And
perhaps for our listeners, what we should say is that here's a bit of a plug at the same time. Our new Facebook group that we've just started up. Perhaps once they're out on YouTube, we will place them up there for everyone to go have a look at.
We did a Facebook group?
We did. People can talk to us now. God knows why they'd want to, but they can.
Yes. And what's the name of the Facebook group, Robbo?
It's called the Pro Audio Suite Podcast Facebook
This is
group.
now 2 accounts on Facebook I can ignore.
We have 2, yeah. So we have the actual page, and now we have
the other
this
one's
group.
mine. Now, if anybody wants to use RTL, because it is in beta as we speak, how can they use it?
Just request a beta, and it's I think if you have a license for Source Connect or whatever, we basically openly beta with our users. So if you're a user, you can just grab a beta of it, and we're happy to have you, get some good use out of it. Give us some feedback in the meantime. There's a long list of features I want to add to it. I think we're pretty close to releasing a version 1 of it. It just takes time to even make something for sale. Literally, it's kind of easy to leave it in beta, if that sounds odd, but it's true.
And the big question, what sort of price range?
Probably something in the $25 per month range, and you can just make as many timelines as you want.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Well, now we all know about RTL.
Absolutely.
Right. So 25 million per month, right?
Yeah. Well, you've got to pay for Somerset somehow, so,
Yeah, that's right. She doesn't
or start paying at least. I mean,
yeah, exactly.
This show was mixed by Voodoo Radio Imaging. Edit by Andrew Peters. Using Rode microphones and Source Connect Now. Tech support from George the Tech Whittam. And supported by Harlan Hogan's VoiceOverEssentials.com. The home of the Portabooth Pro.
You look for trouble.